Welcome to Native Bidaské, Native News Online's weekly spotlight on the people making news and leading change in Indian country.
Welcome to another episode of Native Bidaské. I'm Levi Rickert, your host. With us today, we have John Palfrey from the MacArthur Foundation. Last month, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation announced the launching of a Native Self-Determination program, committing to increase funding and deepen partnerships with Indigenous communities. Our special guest is the president of the MacArthur Foundation, John Palfrey. Welcome to Native Bidaské, John, and I hope you're doing well. How are you today?
Levi, thank you very well. And how are you?
I'm well, and it's that 4th of July week, and everybody's kind of in the celebratory mood, and trying to get a little time off work. So I really do appreciate you taking time from your busy schedule to be with us today.
Likewise, thank you.
And hey, tell us about this new initiative, the Native Self-Determination Initiative.
Absolutely, Levi. First of all, thank you to Native News Online for putting a spotlight on this topic, and also for the great work that you do all the time. I'm coming to you from Chicago, where MacArthur is based, the ancestral homelands of the Pawatami, something I know you know something about.
Yes, sir.
We have indeed recently launched really the next stage in a program toward Native self-determination here at MacArthur Foundation. We can get into the details of where we're headed, but really it's as much a process or a journey as it is any kind of destination. Our goal is to increase the amount of money that we are giving to Native causes in the spirit of self-determination. The work is going to be deeply guided by Indigenous peoples, and we see it as at once a grant-making program. Of course, we'll continue to make grants as we have to Native News Online and others, but we also see it as much as anything, a learning journey and a way of using the many assets that we have as a foundation to be in solidarity with and support of Native self-determination in the U.S. and actually also in other places we operate, such as Nigeria and India. So we're early days on this, but we're extremely interested in building out the program and eager to have lots of good input.
Yes, and we do very much appreciate the funding that the MacArthur Foundation has supplied us over, I think, the last 18 months, and actually some of us is up into 2.5, 3 years into the future. So we really do appreciate that. And I will add, my daughter has in your building, the Marquette building, Native Futures, and you have funded that program as well, she and Deborah. And so thank you very much for that.
I'm glad, Levi. If I might just pause on that for a second to say, the part of our journey has also been being serious about how we think about our building and the land that we're operating on. And the Marquette building, as you may know, if you've ever been here, it's a beautiful historic skyscraper, 17-story skyscraper in Chicago, right in the heart of the city. And the entryway is sort of an homage to Marquette and kind of white settlers, and it's got a narrative that I think any of us who are really thinking about it consider to be the wrong narrative. It's beautiful. It's been done in Tiffany mosaics and so forth, and it's got historical merit and artistic merit. And there are a lot of people who come through into our lobby as part of the architectural tours in Chicago. So one thing we've done is both to partner with the Center for Native Futures, and I'm so glad your daughter's involved, which is, as you may know, the only Indigenous art space devoted to Indigenous art in the city of Chicago, and is on our first floor, and we're delighted to be their partner in that effort. But we've also done an intervention guided by a number of Potawatomi and other local leaders to talk about the story that is presented one way in the lobby, put it that way, and then the second lobby that we've built out as we think a better version of the narrative. So anyway, I hope that you'll come visit, and if so, don't just stay in the first lobby, come into where the intervention is and check out the center where your daughter is.
It just so happens I was there about 6 weeks ago and saw that second lobby, and the exhibition is absolutely fabulous.
Oh,
the artwork is fantastic, and thank you for all you do. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. The artwork is amazing, and the way it was designed, also by Native designers, is so that the art actually can rotate, so it can be a gallery over the coming years. So there's some beautiful art in there now, but there also will be the opportunity to refresh it with other art and to highlight the incredible art from the Indigenous community here in Chicago, and maybe beyond as well.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say this with a little prejudice: Native art is absolutely beautiful.
Absolutely, yes.
So thank you.
Our
Thank you for
building
that.
is much improved by the inclusion of this art. So absolutely, everybody, we're giving a treat to anybody walking through this lobby.
That's very true. Hey, now within the philanthropic world, funding to Indian country is very minimal, very small. I have seen reports that indicate that only 5 cents for every $100 goes to Native programs. Why is the MacArthur Foundation so committed to making sure Native programs are funded? And we do appreciate it.
Thanks, Levi. No, exactly what you described is part of what is driving this particular program. When we have been studying the same fact that you just mentioned, the 5 cents on every $100, which of course is too little to support Native causes in American philanthropy. I suspect it's, I don't know what it is globally, but we could imagine something comparable. And we just think that's too low. But also to your point a moment ago, which is to say, if we're supporting the arts and culture across Chicago, we should be supporting Native arts and culture in Chicago alongside all the other art and culture that we support. When we're doing work in climate, the incredible genius that is in Native communities for how to preserve our planet, if we're only funding causes that are, done a different way, I think we're missing some of the brilliance of how we could actually get this done. You mentioned Native News Online and the grant that I think is funded through our journalism and media program. We are seeking to ensure that every community in America has the news and information that it needs. And if we're not funding in Native communities as well, we are missing a big chunk of America. And then, of course, on and on in other places. So I think it's actually quite straightforward that as we grow as an organization, that we ought to be inclusive of Native communities and to do so in ways that enhance each of the programs that we're in. So that's really how we're thinking about this new effort.
Yes, and 2 weeks ago, something caught my attention that we published that the MacArthur Foundation has placed Dr. Megan Bang, a Ojibwa woman who is a scholar at Northwestern University, to its board. Tell us about Dr.
Well,
Bang.
I am incredibly excited that Dr. Megan Bang is joining our board. We've made the announcement she'll have her first meeting in September. She's an Ojibwe and of Italian descent as well. She is up in Evanston, not far from us here in Illinois these days at Northwestern, and her area of expertise aligns really well with what we're doing at the foundation. So you may know that she has a background in Indigenous studies, but also in climate. And she also studies education. I think she's actually based, her principal appointment at Northwestern, I believe, is in the education school. But we have been doing climate work for a long time. Our mission statement at MacArthur is just, verdant, and peaceful. And the verdant part, of course, speaks to our work in conservation, environment, climate over the years. And Dr. Bang is someone who has huge experience in that area and also has lived experience as an Ojibwe woman. She also used to work for a number of years at Spencer Foundation down the street from us, I think just prior to her appointment at Northwestern, and was directing their programs. And so she has deep experience in philanthropy as well as in some of the topics that we're working on, including this one. So we are very excited that she agreed to join our board, and we are already in conversation with her and look forward to seeing her in September for her first meeting.
Wow, that sounds like a very talented. Nishnawbe word for it is kwe, woman. So what a talented woman! You guys be very proud of that one. And also, additionally, I was really impressed with. I love the idea that you are forming a advisory committee to provide guidance to the foundation as you move forward with this initiative. I know Shelley Lowe, who is most recently from the she was at the National Endowment for the Humanities, and she and I met. We covered Native News Online, attended every single Road to Healing, and that was the Secretary Deb Hollins and Interior Secretary Deb Hollins' initiative with Brian Newland to go gather information about survivors and descendants of Indian boarding school survivors. And so Shelley was on many of those tours, and so I'd see her periodically, and she and I developed a nice friendship. So that's another talented woman. So Tell us about some of the other people in the group, and that's exciting.
Yes, it is true that in most of our programs, if not all, I think we do bring in advisory boards, but I would say it's particularly important in this particular setting. So we have put this out online, which we can maybe post to in the notes for this conversation. But we have invited several people in to be advisors to this program. And you are exactly right that Shelley Lowe is among them. We are so excited that she was willing to join us. So I got to know Shelley when she was chair of the National Endowment for the Humanities, as you were mentioning. And I will just say, it was such a pleasure to be able to talk with and work with Secretary Holland and Dr. Lowe and others in the last administration. It was so helpful to our work at MacArthur. And so when she left that role earlier this year, I reached out to her and we were thrilled that she was willing to join this advisory board. Shelley, Dr. Lowe is also joining Carla Fredericks, who is CEO of the Christensen Fund, as well as Nicole June Marr, who's an elected Alaska Native and president and CEO of the Inutai Foundation. And we are just delighted that these three incredible women will be sort of the core of our advisory council. And we will most likely appoint a few additional members to this advisory council over the coming months and years. But basically, what we really wanted is for this work to be guided deeply by Indigenous leaders. In the case of Carla, Nicole, and Shelley, these are all people that I've admired the work that they've done in related work. And so we have a practice of the very part-time appointments, but to really be led by in this case Indigenous peoples. And I think the addition, of course, of Megan to the board, as well as Carla and Nicole and Shelley, is just a great boon for our organization. I hasten to say that we are also hiring for a director who would be a full-time person on the ground here in Chicago in our office to lead the program day to day, and that recruitment is ongoing. So I would expect to have some additional announcements around, let's say, the staffing and leadership and guidance of this work in the months and years to come.
I really love that approach. So often, people dealing with Native communities has been very one-sided and very one-sided. How's that? And I'll leave it at that. So thank you very much for that commitment that you're doing to solicit advice from Native Americans to give you the guidance. So that's really commendable. What within this new initiative now, self-determination, are there special emphasis areas that maybe the foundation is looking, like children, education, housing, native language, anything specific, or is it yet to be determined?
Yet to be determined is the short answer, but let me back up and tell you how we got here maybe, and that might give a few clues to where we might go. Okay. This announcement of early June, so people watching this online presumably, so 3 or 4 weeks ago from now, was the culmination really of a 2-year process of listening and learning, about 100 conversations with Native leaders around the world and people who we have some contact with or people we didn't know. So really trying to get to know people. We also hired in some wonderful consultants and others who have helped us to shape the program. We have really purposely, though, not wanted to commit specifically to the program areas within Native self-determination that we will be doing more grant making in to date. And that is partly because we really do want these advisors, we really do want a Native director in the seat before we make those commitments. But I'll say just a couple of things that may be helpful. We've been quite involved in a number of things that we will explore extending. So it is not new for us to give money, as you know, to Native communities. A big part of that has been in our climate program. And so we certainly will learn from the ways in which clean energy and the relationship to the land and other things that Native leaders have helped us to learn about and that we funded. That's certainly an area we will continue to look at. We've been involved over the years in what are called CDFIs, or Community Development Finance Institutions. As you probably know, there are Native-led ones in that space, and that principally leads to affordable housing, but that's a zone in which MacArthur has historically been involved, and we've also been involved with Native leaders. I would highlight impact investing. We've invested in an organization called Raven Capital, which is a fund that is Native-led. We will absolutely learn from that experience. The capstone of our conservation program last time was a very large investment in Niatero, which is another organization from which we have learned a lot about the importance globally of Native Indigenous voice and so forth. So the things that we have done over the years are things we'll learn from, but we really will be guided in terms of the specifics of this program by our new advisors and the new director and so forth as they come online.
Well, thank you for that answer. I have a question relating to those who have existing contracts or commitments from the foundation. Will they be able to apply for some of this funding, or is it strictly for those who have not participated?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think it's important to say the way that MacArthur has typically funded is that we have been a long-term funder for a relatively small number of grantees. So there are many ways to think about philanthropy. There are organizations that basically say, we'll give you one grant one time and it's going to be small, but we're going to make a lot of them. So we'll say yes a lot, if that makes sense. And of course, those who are seeking grants, they get more yeses that way. And so there's appeal there. We have tended to be on another end of the spectrum. It's called trust-based philanthropy, where we do a lot of our work. And that is to say, over a period of time, we typically will work with an organization, not forever necessarily, but for a period of time. And you might think about, for instance, our MacArthur Fellows program. That's one in which we have make awards to individuals who are particularly creative, and many members of Native communities have been MacArthur Fellows, of course, over 40 years. In those cases, we give an $800,000 grant, unrestricted, over 5 years. And that's how we typically like to fund, which is we get to know somebody and we give relatively generous funding, and then we'll renew over a period of years. Again, not a guarantee to fund forever under all circumstances, but we tend not to be kind of a one-off funder. Sometimes we will do a one-off grant for a very particular reason, but that's generally not our mode. So again, I can't tell you exactly what to apply for yet, but that's largely because I don't want to be in a position of just making that decision myself. We are going to be guided through this program, through Indigenous Voices. At the same time, certainly someone who's gotten a grant from us in the past wouldn't be precluded. So it's not just new funders only. New grantees only.
Mm-hmm. And we'll have to bring you back when it becomes, as it unfolds, and we know more definition of what the program's going to look like. That'd be great. In the world of pushback, and you mentioned CDFIs, and we at Native News Online, in our sister publication, Tribal Business News, done a lot of work with the Native CDFI network. Basically, it's under attack right now. I mean, if you look at the fiscal year 2026 budget, they've eliminated all funding, and that has sent a shockwave through the Native CDFI programs. And I guess my question to you, John, is really, how do you see in the future, not just MacArthur Foundation, but other philanthropic foundations helping to fill the gaps of some of the clawback, however you want to term it, but there's been a major assault, and mainly on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So how do you and I could probably talk about this all day long, but if you give me an answer, I guess I want to hear how you're dealing with it at MacArthur and how you view the world out of Washington at this current moment.
Thanks, Levi. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a very challenging time for those of us who are devoted to a broad, pluralistic, inclusive vision of what a society looks like, because there's pushback on things that we're trying to do. And I would say that one of the reasons that we have continued along the path of this Native Self-Determination program is to show that we're determined to support communities across America. And of course, Native communities could be a city like Chicago, where I am now, and rural areas, in every corner of the country. And again, I will highlight, we've made some wonderful grants in Nigeria. The Federal Capital Territory of Abuja is an area where a number of Native individuals and tribes and families were displaced to make the capital. And we've done a great deal of funding there through a wonderful organization called CRISED. So this is a global issue, and one that we, I think, can make a difference on. And as you know, there's some pressure against doing this kind of work. I will say I am a complete believer that everything we're doing is lawful. That for us to decide that we want to listen to Indigenous voices, to support work like the Center for Native Futures downstairs in our building, or to support Native News Online, or to support Native CDFIs or otherwise, of course, it's entirely lawful. And we're going to continue to do it. And I think that it's so important that we not lose sight of the broad, inclusive, positive vision of what our country, what the world can be a part of, even when the winds are blowing against us in political terms.
Yes, and thank you for that answer. I am, and we at Native News have been tracking it since January 20th, and some of the stories we hear, like for instance, students at Haskell Indian University out in Lawrence, Kansas, on February 14th went downstairs, and because the directive had come out of Washington to get rid of everybody with 2 years or less, and as food service workers tend to be not necessarily long-term workers, well, no one was there to prepare the food for those kids the following day, the students, and sometimes I don't think America, they hear about these cutbacks. Oh yeah, great job. Government needs to be slashed spending. But when you hear how the rubber really hits the road, in our case, in the Indian country, those kids waking up to no food was just, to me, a travesty. And then my understanding is by noon, the teachers found out what was going on and said, hey, the instructors at the university said, we'll make their food. And I know my tribe, which is located maybe 35 miles away, has been providing custodial services because those jobs were eliminated too. And so we at Native News have tracked this, and like I said, we try to see where the rubber hits the road and really where it matters. Okay. So, and thank you for all you do, sir. And I'm excited to hear about how, as this program is developed, to hear more about it. And certainly you can count on Native News Online and Tribal Business News to report on that progress, so that those tribes and organizations can participate. So thank you for everything you do. Do you have any last word?
Well, Levi, I referenced earlier your connection to the Pawatami. Is it the Prairie Band Pawatami? It's your people.
That's
tell me
correct.
A little about
Yes.
your background there and how that connects.
Well, when I was a child, I've always lived in Michigan. I'm up in Grand Rapids. Our tribes were not, quote, recognized by the federal government. And so I remember the conversation in my grandparents' kitchen where my mother and her siblings were there. And my grandfather, he didn't call it the Prairie Band Pawatami Nation. He called it Kansas. And that's how he talked. He said, if it makes sense to sign up with Kansas, go ahead. And he basically gave my grandmother, my mother, and her siblings permission for us to become tribal citizens of the Prairie Band Pawatami Nation. I remember they're passing the papers around, and my mom had to have our birth certificates. And I just kind of remember the conversation. I will say this. I didn't realize till I was an adult what was happening that day, because I didn't know about tribal recognition. But when I, as an adult, learned about tribal, I said, that's what took place that day. And so it's amazing to me. I have visited my tribe. I have good connections. I see my tribal chairman at national conferences. I see our tribal council. As a matter of fact, they were down in Monica's at the Native Futures last summer. They were in town for some function, and Monica texted me, said, Dad, you're here in Chicago. Come on over. Our tribal council's there. So that was really a delightful day for us. I mean, just to be with my tribal council, and I'm proud to be Prairie Band Pawatami, and there was that sign that said you're on Pawatami. That's another word for Pawatami there. Yep. On the river for and Andrea, I can't think of her last name. I apologize, but that mural was up for a good year or 2 years, and every time I went by there, and Monica and I would walk down there by the river and look at it, and it's just amazing. It gave me chills, actually, because I am very proud to be Pawatami. So,
oh my gosh, thank you for sharing the story. It's a beautiful one, and to realize, how the adult thinks back on the child's experience and then how consequential it was. But of course, the time's like, all right, as a little one. But Andrea Carlson, maybe you could be thinking about.
Yes, that's it. I'm so sorry. Yes.
I loved that. I know the band you were talking about, where it was so publicly there, and now you can come to the Marquette Building and see that we've got a very similar statement in our lobby. And I hope that your listeners also will swing by 140 South Dearborn here in Chicago and check out both the Center for Native Futures, but also the beautiful art that's in the lobby of MacArthur, and the dialogue, of course, with the history as it was told before that. So anyway, I'm really grateful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and thank you for all the good work you there, and in particular focusing on Indigenous peoples, and it's not just here in America, but it's all over the world. And so the MacArthur Foundation is doing fabulous work, and thank you for all you do, John. And hopefully you have a great
You
summer.
too, Levi. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And to our viewers, we've been talking to John Pelfrey from the MacArthur Foundation, and they announced a self-determination initiative. You'll hear more about it as the program is developed, and we will report on it from Native News Online. In the meantime, have a safe summer. It's 4th of July weekend. Be careful with those fireworks, and take care of your loved ones, young ones. Take care of those elders. Give them kisses and hugs, and elders, take care of those young ones, our future. So we'll see you next week. Chi-miigwech.
Thank you for joining us. If you value our warrior journalism for Indian country, please consider supporting our work by scanning the QR code or visiting the link below. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, and sign up for our free daily newsletter.